Welcome back to Tired Old Queen at the Movies. If you can believe it, this is our 15th year making videos. So thanks to all of you for subscribing, following, and watching. And now let's go see the one and only, the man who makes it all happen, Steve Hayes.
Johnny, happy Halloween. This episode marks our 15th year anniversary episode of Tired Old Queen at the Movies. And to celebrate, I chose my favorite classic Universal horror movie, The Bride of Frankenstein, directed by the incredible James Whale and starring Boris Karloff, Colin Clive, Ernest Thesiger, Valerie Hobson, Dwight Fry, and Una O'Connor. Now, this was a sequel to the original Frankenstein, which was done earlier. And in that one, Dr. Frankenstein creates the monster. The monster runs on a rampage. The villagers, as they always did in all the Universal movies, get it up on arms and they storm the castle. The monster takes Dr. Frankenstein, Colin Clive, and throws him off the tower. And then the tower collapses with the monster inside, and both of them are killed. In the sequel, they both live. Dr. Frankenstein survives this 5 or 6 story fall, and they carry him back to the castle and his bride.
Poor Mr. Henry. He was to have been married today to that lovely girl, Elizabeth.
Cover him up.
And then the monster has fallen into the basement of the castle, into the wetlands there, and survived and climbs out. Dr. Frankenstein is recovering. He's visited by Dr. Pretorious, who is an old colleague of his years ago, who's also been working on the theory of life and death and trying to create life from matter. And he takes Dr. Frankenstein to his lab and he shows him these little teeny people that he has created. And he said, but you were able to do this. You were the one who created it, and I want you to take me on, and we're going to create it. And Colin Clive, being Dr. Frankenstein, goes, no, I won't, I can't, I can't, but that he talks him into it. I will. So they get together, and he says, well, I want you to work this time, and I want you to create a woman.
You mean, yes, a woman.
A bride. So they go down into the crypts, because there's always easy access to the crypts and
It's already. I never could stand grave. Shut up and follow me.
The monster has met this kind blind man who is taking him in for a while and taught him how to speak. The old man is lonely, so he just thinks he's another lonely person. And then some people walk in and see the monster in the old man's house and they freak out and the monster goes nuts and he runs away. But now he can talk. So he encounters Dr. Pretorious in the catacombs while Pretorious is looking for bodies for Frankenstein to work on.
Oh, I thought I was alone. Good evening. Smoke?
Pretorious tells the monster, Dr. Frankenstein isn't going to do this unless we talk him into it. And there's only one way to talk him into it, and that's by taking his new bride that he just married before all this started. And we'll kidnap her, and we'll use her for ransom. And the monster, encounters Frankenstein and says, make me a bride. So they do. James Whale was a British gay director. He had started out doing sets and costumes. He was a brilliant artist. He was known for that in the British theater. And he gradually worked into directing, and he directed this amazing play about British soldiers in the trenches in World War I called Journey's End. And he directed that on the London stage, and that took him to Broadway, and then that took him to Hollywood to film Journey's End with the star of Journey's End, who was Colin Clive. He loved Colin Clive. Colin Clive was a bad alcoholic. He was a wonderful actor, but he was just frenzied. He was just really a bad alcoholic. And by the time they got around, he starred him in Frankenstein, and Colin Clive has the famous, it's alive, it's alive, it's alive. He was famous for that. So when they did, a few years later, The Bride of Frankenstein, the studio said he's out of control.
I'll have no hand in such a monstrous thing.
Yes, must.
James Whale said, I'm not doing it without him, because he knew that frantic, frenzied alcoholic personality that he had was just right for it.
She's alive! Alive!
By the time they did this, Whale had put Universal back on the map with Frankenstein and The Invisible Man and The Old Dark House. All of these are produced by Carl Laemmle Jr. Carl Laemmle Sr. had discovered Universal and created the studio, and Jr. was the one who brought money in, and all of a sudden the studio became famous for horror films. So, you know, Whale was in his element.
It will be well worth it, and the Baron will pay.
Yes, yes. Go and get it.
I'll try.
They were sort of giving him carte blanche for Bride of Frankenstein. He loved casting gay people or people who had played gay characters. And there's sort of a gay aura over this film, which is wonderful.
He's a very queer-looking old gentleman, sir.
For the role of Dr. Pretorious, he cast Ernest Thesiger.
What was it? What was the name?
Dr. Pretorious.
And Ernest was this wonderful, gaunt sort of British character actor who had this proboscis that went out like this. We saw him before as the Undertaker in Scrooge with Alistair Sim. And in this one, he's just so, they kicked me out. They got rid of me. They fired me. He has that kind of delivery. And with Colin Clive, I don't want to make another monster. I don't want to make that. The energy is really, really good.
Don't tell me of it. I don't want to hear. I've changed my mind. I won't do it.
I expected this.
He cast these two gay actors to play Lord Byron, Gavin Gordon and Douglas Walton, who had played Darnley, Mary Queen of Scots' gay husband in Mary of Scotland with Catherine Hepburn. And they were Percy Shelley and Lord Byron. And they go, oh, tell us the story. Yes, darling, tell us the story.
The unbowed head of George Gordon Lord Byron, England's greatest sinner. But I cannot flatter myself to that extent.
To play the eventual bride in Mary Shelley, they cast Elsa Lanchester. The Frankenstein story didn't end with the last one. No, it didn't really end there. So this is what happened. And she tells this story, and that's how we get it.
What do you expect? Such an audience needs something stronger than a pretty little love story.
Well, when the monster comes out, it's Elsa Lanchester as the monster. And of course, Ernest Thesiger has the famous line, you know, the Bride of Frankenstein.
The Bride of Frankenstein.
You know, and she's there with this hair that goes, these white streaks coming down it. And when she moves like this, you know. She sees the monster for the first time. She goes, and Elsa Lanchester said she patterned her movements and things after the swans in Regent's Park, which were very nasty characters. They were very nasty bats. So I thought, well, that should be how she looks. She's a very nasty character. Ernest Thesiger also has the most famous line in the movie when they first start, he and Frankenstein first start to create the next monster, the bride. They do a toast, and he goes,
to a new world of gods and monsters.
Fabulous, fabulous. So it has its share of scares, it has its share of thrills, and it has Boris Karloff. Boris Karloff was such a wonderful, sensitive actor, and that's what he brought to the monster. From the very beginning, the monster has these pathetic, you know, and when he sits down next to the bride, and he finally meets the bride, and she screams, or she sees him and just screams. And he goes, she hates me. It breaks your heart. It really breaks your heart. He's so alone. And Karloff was able to bring a pathos to that creature, which is why the movie works so well. You know, he will accidentally kill people. He just tries to keep them quiet because he's so afraid, and he doesn't know his own strength, and he kills people, you know. But he also has that thing that can be really terrifying. The first one he didn't have his teeth in, so he has a much more gaunt sort of look. In the second one, Jack Pierce allowed him to keep his teeth in. Jack Pierce was the great, great makeup artist at Universal. He did all the classic monsters. He did poor Karloff. He wrapped him in gauze for the Mummy. You know, he did the makeup, whatever makeup they needed and things for Frankenstein. He did the Wolfman with Lon Chaney putting yak hair on him at 8 hours. You know, the makeup for this, Elsa Lanchester's took 4 hours and Karloff's took 6 hours to do. They had Valerie Hobson replaced Mae Clark as Mrs. Frankenstein, but people didn't really notice it that much.
Harry, darling.
So they had Una O'Connor. Una O'Connor was this Irish character actress who was always big. Ah! She's always screaming, ah! The monster! The monster! Oh, Daddy, you should have killed him. You should have killed him when you did. Ah! We saw her as the old maid in Witness for the Prosecution. James Whale loved her. He put her in. You know, she's kind of distracting, but she's wonderful. Also in this movie is Dwight Frye. Dwight Frye was this diminutive little actor who played creepy characters. His most famous character is Renfield in the original Dracula with Bela Lugosi. Rats! Give me rats! Master, master, give me rats.
Wise man.
Then in the original Frankenstein, he played Igor, which the monster hangs eventually because he's so mean to the monster. He whips him and beats him. And in this one, he plays another sort of character like that helps Pretorious get bodies for the female one.
Where did you get it?
I gave the gendarme 50 crowns.
Frankenstein kills him too, throws him off the tower, so twice the monster killed him. He would show up periodically in almost every single Universal monster movie after that until he died, like in his 30s, early 40s. His last movie was Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. Remember that one? We did that one for Title Queen at the Movies. The only person that's not in this one is Maria Uspinskaya, and the only one who missed the boat.
Wait! Don't go!
This movie is atmospheric as hell. James Whale, his visions, like for this one and Frankenstein and the Old Dark House and the Invisible Man, they're so futuristic and gothic at the same time. They're beautifully, wonderfully shot. Some of the most beautiful black and white cinematography you'll ever see. Whale's career after a while, they thought he was too expensive, that his movies cost too much, and they lost interest. And then by the mid-40s, his career was over. He'd made a whole lot of money, and he'd bought a house in Hollywood. He loved living there. And eventually, he got very despondent and very depressed, and he drowned himself in his pool in the mid-50s. And his life was the basis of Gods and Monsters, which we did on Tired Old Queen at the Movies, that Ian McKellen played that wonderful role of James Whale. I love James Whale. He was so determined to have things the way that he wanted them, you know, and he was a fighter, and he was blatantly gay. He had no problem with that. If you didn't like it, that was too bad. And I think it got in his way because he didn't play the game of covering it up like George Cukor did. He was very, very open about it, you know, and if he saw somebody cute, he flirted with him. He wasn't above doing that, you know. But this movie, I think, of the horror films that he did, is his crowning achievement. It is glorious. And when it ends, you go, oh my God, it's still just astonishing that they pulled it off. And so for Halloween, sit back, get comfortable, get your popcorn, and go into the catacombs with Colin Clive, Ernest Thesiger, and Dwight Frye, and Elsa Lanchester in James Whale's classic, The Bride of Frankenstein. Oh!
Let's all go to the lobby.
Una O'Connor and one of my favorite character actors, Ernest Thesiger. Thesiger. Thesiger.
The popcorn can't be beat.